The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in the podcast belong solely to the hosts and not the host's past, present, or future employers. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's Brian and Mr. Betcher this week for Breaking Down Security. Hello. I don't know why I'm sitting here talking, but in my head is like, when people are strutting down the street, it's like, you can tell me, and you got your Saturday Night Fever soundtrack going in your head. I have the Cowboy Bebop theme stuck in my head, I don't know why. It's been one of those weekends, I think. So cool. Mr. Betcher, we haven't talked since I got back from vacation. How are you doing, sir?
Good. I think it was before you went on vacation.
Oh yeah, that bad, huh? Yeah.
So
okay. Well, I won't bore you with the details of my vacation. You can just listen to me talk about it with Miss Berlin last week, if you want to go that route. Speaking of the captivating Ms. Berlin, she sent us a text message about 5:30 and said, somebody didn't tell me they had homework and there's a lot of it and it's due tomorrow. And I was like, oh, okay, well, don't yell at him too badly, because about 30 years ago, that was me. And you should be glad that he reached out to you instead of didn't tell you like I did with my folks. Once I hit high school, I had a ton of homework and, my grades suffered for it, which is why I ended up in the Navy, but that's another story. So, anything you want to bring up before we get started, Mr. Betcher? We do have a guest this week, but is there anything you'd like to mention?
Oh, you put me on the spot.
I know.
Right? I don't know.
Don't say anything about UT or anything like that. That's not important. College football is not important. So yeah.
No, it is not.
Nope.
I have nothing. Nothing.
Okay, good. All right. Well, I just wanted to make sure. It's been about, it's been a minute since you've been on the mic with me here. So I want to introduce our interview person this week. You might have heard this person along with Philip Wiley talking about another book that they collaborated and wrote together. This week, the author of, I have the book here. Okay. So 8 Steps to Better Security, a simple cyber resilience guide for business. The author is Kim Crawley. Thank you, Kim, for joining us on the show this week.
It's a pleasure to be here again. You got a great show going on.
Checks in the mail. So for those of you who did not listen to the interview we did with you and Philip, maybe you could tell people a little bit about yourself, how you became such an accomplished author and what motivates you to, still be in InfoSec after, all these years.
I had like a really weird background. So I don't want to turn this into like a 3-hour conversation, because that's what it would need to turn to in order to be like a complete story. Mm-hmm. But I was raised by a father who was a novelist, and that did 2 things for my life in my childhood. First of all, it taught me that writing for a living is something that someone could do, because I watched my father do it. And secondly, eventually he needed to buy personal computers in order to do his work, and he would have technical issues, and little girl Kim Crawley would fix his technical issues for him. The first PC that we got was a Windows 3.1 OEM 486, back when that was brand new. And yeah, I was like, I think 9 years old when we got that Windows 3.1 OEM, and I would fix his printer port issues. And I learned very quickly that if I removed lines from autoexec.bat, Windows would boot up quicker. So that really started my fascination with computers. And at the same time, I was learning how to write commercially. Like I was learning how to write for a commercial market before my age was in the double digits. Like it started really early. I didn't really consider IT as a career, partly because my grade 4, that's 4th grade in Canadian, teacher told me that I had to be a math whiz in order to work with computers. She thought that would encourage my math grades to improve instead of discourage me from a career with computers. So I didn't really start, I mean, obviously I was a hobbyist, but I didn't really start studying IT seriously until I was in my mid-20s.
Right.
Eventually, I got enough certs to be a desktop support technician. I got like a lot of malware tickets that I had to deal with every day. Removing malware from an average of 30 Windows PCs per day made me really fascinated with cybersecurity. It took me about a decade for all of that to kind of coalesce in a career when I was like writing and researching cybersecurity. So I was doing it for like a number of years, and then it got to a point where I was starting to make money, and then it took a few more years to get to a position where I was making enough money from it for that to be my career. And my career has just been up and up since then. I don't think my career really took off until I was in my 30s. So, so I'm a late bloomer, but I've had just an incredible journey. I've been able to do all kinds of research and writing for some of the top tech brands like AT&T Cybersecurity, BlackBerry Cylance, Venafi, the list goes on. After I collaborated on the Pentester Blueprint with Phil Wiley, Hack the Box came knocking on my door. And they said, we're going to be starting a new blog soon. We want you to run that blog. And I was ecstatic. Everything I heard about Hack the Box is a very new company. They kind of started the whole online pen tester training market properly. And everything I heard about the company was wonderful. So I was really excited to be hired by them and to lead their blog. So before I was contributing to blogs, now I'm in charge of a tech blog. And Hack the Box's blog has been a really, really fulfilling experience for me. The company is really, really cool. They're all into hacker culture. They deeply respect hacker culture. Everyone at Hack the Box is a hacker. And I've been able to really leave my creative mark on their blog because now I'm in a position of some authority. I get to creatively direct that blog. So the CEO, Horace, I'm going to totally mess up the pronunciation of his last name. The CEO, Horace Pilarnos, has really shown a lot of faith in me. And I've gotten like really great direction from our marketing director, Daphne. So yeah, that has been really cool. And then my experience with the Pen Tester Blueprint made me more confident about writing books. So Jim Minitel at Wiley Tech was really eager for me to write a book on my own. I gave him about 5 different pitches around December 2020. He said yes to 2 of the 5 pitches. So in early January, the book deal for 8 Steps was signed, sealed, and delivered. And I spent January till July writing the book. And this book is really, really important to me. This is an experiment to see that if Kim Crawley can write a book about cybersecurity on her own that people enjoy and that they learn from. So yeah, so that's I left out a lot of stuff, but that's the most in a nutshell version I could possibly tell.
That's cool. Yeah. You've also you did mention Tribe of Hackers. You're actually in that. There's before we started recording, you'd mentioned that there's an audiobook coming out for Tribe of Hackers in which you actually read your section of the book, which I found interesting. I was like, I hear, the audiobook's coming out. They should try to get the folks who are actually interviewed in there to do each section. So it's cool that you're doing yours. Also the book you do with Philip Wiley has also got an audiobook coming out. I understood, or it will be
the
coming out soon.
audiobook has been around for about 10 or 11 months now.
Oh, well, there you go. So you can go get the audiobook of that if you the thing I like about audiobooks is one, I treat them like really long podcasts, and I tend to walk a lot every day. So, I'll buy a book or I'll, listen to podcasts or something, about, 45-minute walk. So I can finish a book, in about a week if I'm listening diligently to it. I like it for the accessibility of that. I don't have the patience, I think, to sit down and read a Dead Tree version or even ebooks. In these cases, a lot of times I don't, I can't just sit still and do that. So having the audiobook available is excellent. So I do appreciate you getting Wiley to do that, or if Wiley's actually cares enough to do audiobooks like that. Not every book publisher does. So. So going back to the blog thing, not the blog thing, but you're running their blog over at Hack the Box, that's pretty awesome. I love Hack the Box. So before we get to your book, I want to ask about, like, let's say somebody's starting a blog, or they they work at a company and they think a blog is a good idea. How would they potentially pitch that? I mean, with you, it was you got reached out to, I would imagine, to do the blog, but let's say you are the person who wants to start the blog. How do you pitch that to your organization? And this may actually dovetail into part one of your book, but how do you pitch something like that, an initiative like that to the company and show its value?
As a custom, when a tech company has an official corporate blog, it's always a function under their marketing department. One of the major reasons why tech companies have these blogs is it generates SEO for their website. The way Google's analytics, not their analytics, but their algorithms work, which is if you have more recent content on your website more often, more updates, it'll get ranked higher.
Oh, okay.
Also, people share blog posts on social media, so that extends the reach of a brand even more. So if you're in a position with a company where you can influence what they do, I would say go to your marketing department, if you have one, and say, this is why we need a blog. We need to establish our brand as being knowledgeable about cybersecurity matters. We need to improve the SEO of our website, and we need people to share our content on social media.
Sounds good. Yeah. The other thing is, and I've seen this at other orgs, it's like you'll write a blog post, but then somebody else will put their name on it, which makes me unhappy. So I would argue to the marketing people that you have to put your own, but you have to have your own name on it, and it's not the COO who's ghost written the damn thing or something like that. That's pretty much tantamount for me to plagiarism, just taking somebody else's work as your own. So teach the marketing people that it's not the COO or the CTO that people give a damn about. It's the people who actually wrote it, because I've seen too many CTOs or COOs who supposedly have good blogs on their company's website, and then they go and speak and they don't know they couldn't find their ass with Google Maps and a flashlight. So, yeah. Anyway, so I think this dovetails into your book, which would be the where in the hell is it? 8 Steps to Better Security: A Simple Cyber Resilience Guide to Business. So, we're not going to go through the whole book, but you can grab a preview of the book online if you want to check it out. There's a lovely introduction from Chad Khaleesi, who's the CISO over at resilience.sh. So check out that if you want to read about the book and him introducing Kim's book. So there are 8 simple rules here. Simple rules or simple concepts in this case. And chapter 1 is fostering a strong security culture. So, things like a blog, setting up a blog if your company, has need of something like that.
In my opinion, the blog is about the public face of the company. So security culture is more what happens within the company.
Okay.
Security culture is about encouraging strong cybersecurity habits. Mm-hmm. Human beings are social creatures. We will copy the behavior of the people around us. Like, for example, I've found that at a pedestrian crossing, if it's safe to cross, but the pedestrian crossing sign doesn't say go yet. If I just start crossing the road and there are other people there, they'll see me crossing the road and they'll follow me.
Right.
So that's a kind of a psychological example of how that works.
Nice. Okay. So it's almost like I don't know, it'd be like a lemming thing, but you're the person in the front. So you're not the lemming. The lemmings are the people who decide, oh, okay, she says it's good to go ahead and, cross. So yeah, I saw that a lot in Europe. It was like, the people who are, in Rome or whatever, it would be like, they know exactly when the lights are going to change. They know when they can go across. The people who were standing on the side were either tourists or people who just, knew they couldn't make it in time or whatever. So that makes sense. So when you say fostering a strong security culture, what are the good hard and fast rules here on doing so? I mean, I think we've talked about this with regards to things like change management, where you have to get investment from, engaged people. That's, the things I learned in change management at PopSci was 70+% of security initiatives, or pretty much any initiative, without an engaged leadership, it pretty much fails, or it does not meet expectations. So I guess the question is, how do you get those folks to care? What's the impetus for them wanting to care in this case? I mean, and this doesn't mean just a startup. I mean, you mentioned whether you're a new startup or a 50-year-old company. If you're trying to, I would imagine the attitudes are different between a 50-year-old company and a startup. So how do you get the management to care?
That's an excellent question. I think, first of all, it helps if the people running the company respect the importance of cybersecurity. And that is a huge problem, as you know. Like, you hear about all kinds of companies of all sizes and all industries, and you learn that they don't have any security budget until they get hit by ransomware. And then all of a sudden a security budget materializes. Mm-hmm. So definitely, yeah, like, leadership starts at the top. There's also needs to be an understanding that security is the responsibility of everyone in the organization, not just the IT people, but also the janitor, for instance, the receptionist, the salespeople. Anyone who has access to the company's information has a role to play in fostering a strong security culture. It can be strengthened by frequent training. There should be training sessions at least once or twice a year about phishing and about vishing and other social engineering attacks. And if employees are treated well and they're paid well, then generally they will want the company to do well. Even if someone isn't really technical, you can explain to them how, for instance, a ransomware attack would harm the company, or a data breach would harm the company. If you can get the people to care about the company they work for and explain the negative effects of cyber attacks, then that goes a long way. Also, like, repetition, like, security training isn't something that you do once and then you forget about it. There should be reminders. I work for a company now, Hack the Box, that is a big believer in education through gamification. Mm-hmm. That people learn better and they're more engaged in the learning process if you can make something engaging the way a video game is.
Can you give an example of the gamification training aspect of that?
Oh, yeah. It might not be feasible for a company to develop an app like what Hack the Box does, but there are other things that you could do, like you could do trivia contests, for instance. So we're all in the boardroom and we're discussing what social engineering exploits look like. And we do little trivia competitions, pop quizzes, maybe turn something into a Trivial Pursuit or Jeopardy like quiz game. That would be the easiest way to do it. Hack the Box also does corporate training in various areas. Like our business market is huge, but without like plugging my employer, there are lots of different ways to go about gamification. If you don't have the resources to develop a video game or a web app that's a video game, then you can always make something like a game show, like an old-fashioned game show.
Okay. So in your book here, you have a quote from somebody who said, "Culture is what happens when people are left to their own devices." That was Tim Ferriss, lifestyle and wellness writer. How does that translate to a company when, in security, we don't normally leave people to their own devices. We actually are ones who are supposed to be the ones who are trying to lead the push to a lot of, various security initiatives. We do tout the idea that security is everyone's responsibility, but it sounds like when you leave people to their own devices, they're going to do whatever is the easiest, not necessarily what is the most secure. So how do we blend leaving them to their own devices and security into one nice tapestry?
Well, I mean, obviously a major attack vector is the problem of shadow IT. And shadow IT happens obviously when users find that the applications that their employer gives them aren't practical for them. Right. And the easiest way to eliminate the risk of shadow IT is to discuss with the people with your company. Do you like these applications? If you don't like them, why not? And try to find a solution so everyone is using a corporately administered application for everything.
Right.
There's lots of different ways to go about it. Obviously, yeah, you want the most secure thing to do to be the easiest thing to do. And there's this difficult compromise that always needs to be made between security and usability. And deciding where you're going to put the mark has everything to do with risk management, risk assessment. So yep. It's a very sophisticated and complicated problem, definitely.
Right. So, I mean, the only example I would say is if you're using something like Salesforce, and you're pretty much screwed because there's no good examples of a ERP system there. I apologize to the Salesforce people. They'll probably never sponsor the show, but it's the more complicated these devices and these softwares get, the less options there are for good options. But so do you have to have a security department to have a strong security culture?
That's an excellent question. When I wrote this book, I decided that this book is about business for a business market. But from that point, I set my net as wide as possible. So I gave a lot of examples of how different sized companies can design their security. And if a business is really, really small, like for instance, a convenience store with a total of 3 employees, and one of them isn't really, well, they're not employees really because 2 of them own the convenience store.
Right.
Then their adult offspring, who is confident with computers, is their cybersecurity.
Okay.
Right. That would be an example of a really small company with few resources. Right. And then it scales all the way up to really large companies with 10, 20, 30, 50,000 employees. And you get that large and you have the resources for, a SOC and for a CCERT and everything else. So what you can do and how you design your security team will obviously depend on your resources and how many people you have.
Right. Okay. I like here on page 10 where it's like a strong security culture begins with everyone understanding how they can affect your security and are willing to be accountable for that. Going back to the change management stuff, they talked about something called ADCAR, which is awareness, desire, knowledge, oh crap, the A and the R are like, reinforcement and other things. But what you're saying here is absolutely correct. It's like, you got to create awareness, and you have to create a desire for people to want to be secure. Creating, showing them how they are instrumental to the overall, security posture in the organization, and how their actions can affect others, not just from a security point of view, but from an overall business process point of view, I think is important. The one thing is, you've written the book for business leaders and for the CISOs, or for those folks. What if they themselves don't know how to sell security to the people inside? How are there instructions in the book? Because like I said, I'm literally reading through. So can you give me an example of what a good first step is? I know we've talked a little bit about building awareness and everything, but is there is it built around initiatives, or it's like, somebody says, hey, we do a lot of code, we'd have a lot of devs. We should probably maybe start with something small, like bringing in somebody to build security awareness. Like, I know this lady named Kim Crawley. She could come in and talk to us about security, or something like that. Is it like a guest speaker kind of thing, maybe to start out with, or,
I would say bring the hard data for how much cyber attacks can cost a company. And I cite some scary figures in my book. Like, one of my favorite statistics comes from IBM's cost of a data breach report. I cited the figure from their 2020 cost of a data breach report. I think the average data breach in their study in the United States costs a company a total of $8.6 something million.
Wow.
And that's why a lot of companies won't start spending money on cybersecurity until they've had their first data breach or ransomware attack. Instead of waiting for that to happen, you go to the CEO and the CFO with dollars and cents. It doesn't always have to be a catastrophic cyber attack. You could explain, for instance, if you don't have a way to mitigate DDoS attacks, explain why network downtime costs the company money. If our networks aren't running because it's been DDoSed, we're not making money while our network's not running.
Right. Would this be something where you could say, $8.5 million is the average cost of, a data breach? And that, I'm assuming that's just time and effort of, investigation and whatever. That doesn't include the potential fines down the road from the FTC or the SEC or what have you. Would you be able to say, well, okay, you could give us $8.5 million when the breach happens, or you can give us like $1 million now and we can do X, Y, and Z to help, drop those costs? Is there a way to do like a cost benefit analysis saying, look, $1 million will get us X, and that will buy this much, I don't want to say insurance, but this will buy this much risk reduction to make that a better thing? Is it a way
cost benefit analysis? That's the perfect phrase. And I actually use that term in my book. So.
Okay, cool. Okay. Let me see. Mr. Betcher, have any questions?
Now, yeah, these $8 million breaches, right? So do they start as simply as one guy answers the phone and he just wants to be helpful, right? And that's his nature, to be helpful, and he's actually helping the bad actors, right? And you have to train them to not trust anyone, right? Do they get as simple as that, or somebody clicking a link, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the majority of these attacks start with social engineering, because it's much easier to penetrate a network starting with social engineering than trying to go from a purely technical strategy. So yeah, I mean, human beings are the weakest link. I would encourage companies of all sizes, train your employees to understand, for instance, if you need to permit some sort of access to your endpoint, for instance, or some other sort of access to the company's information. Train your employees, and this is part of security culture too, that if they get an email and it says it's from their CEO saying, you got to give me your password, or saying anything related to that could be related to privilege escalation or some other sort of access to your data, that the employee will not be penalized if they say no. Make it corporate policy that if really high level stuff needs to be done, if really high level access needs to be granted with an employee's interaction, the CEO had better be doing a video meeting with them or be in their office physically asking for that access. And that they're not going to get fired, they're not going to be penalized if they say no to a request over email or over the phone.
That's very good. Very good.
Well, that's being positive about security instead of, trying to blame somebody for wasting IT's time or what have you. I mean, I'm sure IT would rather investigate a false positive than not be told when something hits the fan. And then, it's like, well, why didn't you tell us this was going on? It's like, well, I want to get yelled at again. Y'all treated me like shit the last time I, sent something along, and, I just didn't feel like I wanted to help you this time. So, screw you hippies. And so that's how breaches happen, because people either don't want to report out of fear, or, their relationship with IT or security was not a positive one, and they did not feel like they could, do so without any reprisals. So sometimes I think we're our own worst enemies with that, because we just assume that they know everything we know, and that's not always the case. I find myself forgetting that at times as well when I work, because I'm a filthy PM now. I just manage pen test engagements. So sometimes there's some knowledge that I know, and I'm like, God, I told you this the last time. And I have to remind myself that they have 15 other things that they're doing during the day. My piddly little thing doesn't rank high enough on their priority list. So it's my job to keep reminding them of that fact. So, I try to remember that. Usually it's after the fact when I, have to go, okay, I'll send you this again. So,
what of intellectual properties? Is there an in to management to say, okay, what is this company actually worth? I mean, do we have data that's proprietary? And if that got out and that got just put on the internet for all to see, I mean, what would the cost of that be, right?
That's when you get into asset management, right? You classify your data assets. You classify them by sensitivity, by context, et cetera, et cetera. And then you use that for, you factor that into like a cost benefit analysis that you use for your risk management. So yeah, I mean, obviously, like you guys work with Amanda Berlin, and she wrote that really great book on defensive cybersecurity. And one of the most important parts of defensive cybersecurity is to inventory and classify your data assets.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mr. Betcher, that was chapter 6, bro. We were going to get to that. Dang it.
Hey, I got the book.
So do I. I bought the book before we started, but chapter 6 is controlling your assets. Anyway.
Okay. Sorry.
No, that's okay. So I guess that brings me up to one question I had mentioned before we started recording. You have this laid out in chapters. Is this a logical progression here in these chapters, or can you, like Mr. Betcher just did, skip to chapter 6 and, start looking through those things?
We were just talking about getting management to find value in security, right? So if they think that the data is worth $1 billion, then maybe they ought to spend a subset of that billion to try and protect that $1 billion asset that they have, right? And hence you get the budget, you get the security program that is necessary and applicable to defending that $1 billion asset.
No, I understand. I'm just digging at you a little bit, but I was just wondering if there's a natural progression to these, or if you can say, okay, well, we already have security culture, in my opinion. Um, uh, we can move on to chapter 6, which is data asset value, or oh, this PCI audit's coming up, so we need to understand how we're going to explain PCI audits to people, like in chapter 3 with regulatory compliance or what have you. Can this be done in any order? Can you just open up the book into any chapter, or is there actually specific order, like Star Wars movies where you watch 4, 5, and 6? And
I
then,
can empathize with people wanting to read the steps out of order, because I admittedly do that with books sometimes. There is a logical progression in the sense that you absolutely have to, when you are preparing your company's security hardening and your security posture, you definitely have to start with security culture and then hiring the right people, and then so on and so forth. But if you want to read the chapters out of order, that's fine. But once you've read all the chapters, you plan based on the order of the chapters in the book.
Okay. Yeah, because I think Mr. Betcher has a good point. It's like, if you're you have $1 billion worth of data, and you don't have a good security culture, or you're trying to build your security team, do you build based on the data value, or do you build upon how big your company is? I mean, if you're a startup with a unicorn valuation, your data that you're storing or whatever you're doing may not be worth $1 billion. You've just managed to hoodwink some angel to give you $1 billion. Mr.
Honestly, some of the chapters, the different steps can be done in different orders. I mean, obviously,
Okay.
security culture and hiring a strong security team have to be steps 1 and 2. But I mean, chapter 3 is like regulatory compliance, and then chapter 4, frequent security testing, 5, security framework application. You probably you could do all those simultaneously, right?
Okay.
Controlling your data assets, hopefully once you have, you might want to do that before the security testing.
Right.
The rest of those chapters can be done in different order, but 1 and 2 vital have to be done in orders 1 and 2.
So that was it at part 1 with Kim Crawley. You can find her on Twitter at Kim_Crawley. Reason I'm doing this custom bespoke outro this week is when we were doing part 2, Kim had mentioned a conference that she runs called Disinfosec, which will happen on Saturday, September the 18th, 2021. If you're interested in checking that out, which is next weekend, because this is recording, or I'm posting this on the 13th of September, go check that out. You can go to disinfosec.tech. For those of you who are having understanding what that's about, it is they will feature, says this year we will feature more disabled people talking about cybersecurity. No professional experience is required as long as you have something to say. We will provide subtitles and all content and descriptive audio text to make our event as accessible to deaf and blind people, according to her website. They also have a corporate sponsor. They are being sponsored this year by MongoDB, so that's pretty awesome of the MongoDB folks to do that. They paid for video streaming. The director paying for the Zoom technical services. So any remainder from the conference will be distributed between various folks on their website. They also have a couple of GoFundMe's that they're looking for to help people who are participants and spectators to donate to disabled people directly. So go check those out as well. Help out if you can. So there you go. Mr. Betcher can be found at Betcherpwned, BOETTCHERPWNED. Ms. Berlin can be found at InfoSyster, INFOSYSTIR. You can follow me at Brian Brake, BRYANBRAKE, and BrakeSec podcast is BRAKESEC, BrakeSec. You can find out over 300 episodes and probably over 300 hours worth of potential CPEs for your CISSP or what have you by going to breakingsecurity.com. That's BRAKEING security.com. And thank you to our Patreon donors for all of their support to help us pay for hosting fees, Zoom, Libsyn syndication, and other, just time and effort of getting out a show every week. So appreciate their help on that. That's it for Breaking Down Security this week. We'll be back with part 2 of our discussion with Kim Crawley. Between then and now, we'll also have our first discussion with Patrick Garrity from Blumera. That is a sponsored podcast. So the next one you hear after this one will be the Blumera sponsored show. And then, we'll have Kim on the same weekend that she's at DisInfoSec doing her conference there. So it's hopefully you'll turn in for part 2, and hopefully you'll listen to us talk to Blumera. It's not overly vendory like you would hear on some other shows where it's like, tell us how awesome your product is. We kind of get into some discussion about why you should implement log correlation and how is it important. It helps you with things like incident response. So if you listen to us do interviews with people, just on over specific topics, it's that kind of feel to it. It's not like, tell us how awesome your little product is or whatever kind of thing. So I hope you will enjoy that and take away some talking points, and feel free to reach out to Patrick and the Blumera team if you have interest in discussing that. So cool. That was it for Breaking Down Security this week. Take care of yourselves. Be kind to one another, and remember to take care of yourself, because you're the only you have. I'm going to talk to you again soon.